Mick Makes It Big is loosely based on a true story. It's something that happened to my brother John. I hope you enjoy it. Please leave likes or subscribe. Cheers. Mick Makes It Big. Written and recorded by Tim Orchard. All authors' rights reserved. I could have been someone once. A star, or so they said. Myself, I was never quite sure. But hey, these things do happen. We were in the front room, my kid brother, the little sister, Catman, and me. Catman was a mate. He lived in a bed sit by the station, and I don't think he ate a cooked meal from one week's end to the next. I'd get him up to my folks' house every couple of weeks and stuff him full of Sunday dinner. It wasn't charity or anything like that. He played the guitar. I was music mad. After dinner was done and the parents were away having their Sunday afternoon nap, we'd go into the front room and Catman would play a few tunes. He was pretty good and could play that guitar nice and bluesy, sort of slow the rockers down to a groove. He'd even written a couple of songs himself. I suppose I envied him. Like I say, I was music mad. I had every Elvis record ever made, even dozens of picture cover import 45s. Not just the King, but Gene Vincent, Little Richard, Jerry Lee, Chuck Berry. Back then, I could tell you when a record was cut, what label it came out on, who produced it, who wrote it, even the name of the guy they sent for sandwiches, all that shit. Catman could do it though. He could pick up a guitar and play. I admired that. Originally, we'd met at DiMaggio's. It was the only coffee bar in Dartford. Catman played there once a week. He was good, but he didn't have any style, you know what I mean? Dressed like a college boy, all dog-toothed jacket with patched elbows and cavalry twill trousers. No style. Me, on the other hand, I was what you would call a poser. I had all the gear and tried my best to look cool. Slick back hair, jeans, jean jacket, black shirt, winkle pickers. A few people, girls mostly, thought I looked like Elvis. I loved that. Yeah, Catman and I were an odd pair, really. It was the music which drew us together. Catman was always trying to show me stuff, chords, notes. He said it was all practice, 90% practice, 10% talent. But my fingers never stayed where I put them on the guitar's neck. Anyway, I didn't care what Catman or anyone else said. More than work made my heroes, maybe even more than talent. When I listened to the records, it was something else, not any 10% or 90%. I don't know, it was like magic. Catman had the 10% all right, maybe more, but the magic? How many people have that? Not Catman and not me. I had nothing but a rock and roll fantasy. Jesus, it sounds stupid now. I was a poser, even in my own bedroom, pulling faces in the mirror, mean, moody Johnny, curling my lip. Yeah, I'd get in the bedroom, a record on the dance set, the collar turned up, progress from curling my lips to wiggling my hips to mouthing the words. Pretty soon the dresser became a piano and I was Little Richard rocking and mocking, or Jerry Lee Lewis with that lecherous leer, Gene Vincent, Buddy Holly. I could even do a fair impersonation of Brenda Lee. For 3 or 4 minutes I could be anyone. I was best at the King, my hero, Elvis. I had him down to perfection. So it's Sunday. We're in the front room and Catman is trying to get me on the guitar and give me all the 10%, 90% stuff. And me, I'm just trying to get him to play Hound Dog. Then the darling little brother chips in. It's not your fault you can't play the guitar. Talent is a very funny thing. Pompous brat. Catman burst out laughing, but I wasn't impressed. All I needed was a 10-year-old philosopher on my case. Then, like some cranky prima donna, he pushed himself up out of the chair, tossed his head, curled his lip, and gave a provocative wiggle of his hips. I tell you, he looked dead weird with those skinny legs sticking out of those short trousers. A pervert's delight. Catman was doubled up with the giggles. Me, I was going pink around the ears and green at the gills. The little git had been spying on me. You'd think, having lived in the whole family thing for 18 years, I'd know secrets were impossible to keep, but privacy is something most families don't understand. Wanting to be alone was like a personal affront to the rest of the household, especially if you share a bedroom with your younger brother. Sure, I'd lock the door when I wanted to play records, but the little sod would stand outside scratching like a dog. I'd give him a couple of bob to go away. It was obviously generosity wasted. The little turd had been spying on me anyway. He gave a wink and said, "Do hound dog, Johnny." My sister began to giggle and Catman was laughing, but I think he caught a sick look on me. The brother said again, "Come on, Johnny, do hound dog, please." I tell you, there was a lot going on in my head at once. One part of me wanted to show off and show them. Oh, I don't know. The rest of me wanted to hide under a bloody big rock. I blustered on about brothers and a room of my own as though it was a joke. As for Catman, he must have thought I'd been practising those bloody chords in secret because he held out the guitar. And like a fool, I took it. Sometimes life is stacked against you and sometimes you stack it against yourself. The brother gave an excited clap of his hands. He pulled a record from the rack and put it on the player, and I let him do it. Fate sealed. I stood up and hung the guitar loose off my shoulder like a machine gun and did it there in the front room, pouting and posturing, every wiggle and sneer. As it was, I forgot my embarrassment and got right into it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. The brother and sister clapped when I finished and Catman too. The brother was so proud he kept shouting for more until Dad banged on the ceiling. A couple of nights later, Catman was back with a pile of records, a top hat and a long pink feather boa. He'd got it all worked out. I didn't have an argument because I didn't have anything to hide anymore, and once we'd started practising, it was a laugh. We were at it every spare moment for weeks. Myself, I couldn't believe how easy it was. One day you're making a fool of yourself in the mirror. Next, you're on stage getting paid for the same thing. Mind you, Catman organised everything, found an agent, and we were away. We weren't doing anything earth-shattering. We were the act between the films. Yeah, they still did that back in 1960. Friday and Saturday night, a 15-minute spot while they changed the reels. The cinema would hire a group or a comedian or something like us. Yeah, we played all the hot spots. The Lewisham Odeon, the Scala at Woolwich, the Gravesend Coliseum, cinemas from Rochester to the Old Kent Road. South London was our oyster, so I kept my day job. The act between the films, sometimes a pub or a club, mime and impersonation to records. We did stuff like the Everly Brothers and a spoof on Nina and Frederick's Little Donkey. Catman was Nina. I drew the lion in dressing up as a woman. Yeah, and Catman did Spike Jones, Cocktails for Two. He had a nice comic touch. Oh, yeah, and we did Stan Freeberg's John and Marcia. Me in top hat and towels and Catman in an old evening dress. A 6-foot streak of piss in high heels and a pink feather boa. A hard record to get through, that is, without laughing. John, Marcia, John, John, Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. John, 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 Marcia, John, Marcia, 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 John, John, John. And I'd do an Elvis as a finale. We were just a couple of blokes pissing around to other people's records, yet the act went down very well most of the time. I enjoyed it. It was a poser's paradise, and we were paid too. Once we were rolling, we were busy most Friday and Saturday nights. We did the act for 9-10 months. Catman thought it was a great experience. To him, it was like a stepping stone, like the old timers with music hall. I was just along for the ride. Eventually, He wanted to get a couple of other guys and start a group. He reckoned we would write our own songs and I would be the front man. I'd say yeah, but I couldn't see it. Apart from the idea of me singing, what British groups made good music then? People said rock and roll was dead, but no amount of Cliff Richards or Adam Faith were going to replace it. Of course, I know it all changed, but I couldn't see into the future, could I? Anyway, I was quite happy. Then I was discovered. Yeah, discovered. To me, it was like an unconvincing movie, and it was happening in Woolwich Arsenal, the Scala. Down south, in the lands of gumbo and cornbread, chitlins and black-eyed peas, good old boys, blue moons and brown-eyed girls, men in white linen suits and string ties. It could happen. But south of the river, pie and mash, I didn't think so. But then who am I? The manager of the Scala liked us. It was one of the first places we'd played, and he had us back a few times. One of the great things about what we did was there was still a good bit of Saturday night left after we'd finished. That night we'd done our spot and the audience was stuck into the main feature, and we were off for a couple of pints. The foyer was deserted except for the girl behind the kiosk, and usually the door out front was left open, but looking back, I suppose the manager had locked it, so we couldn't slide off. The girl had to buzz him for the key. He came over swinging the keys on a long silver chain clipped to the waistband of his trousers, but he didn't unlock the door. He was a nice guy and he was into the act, although dog-eared and dipped in dandruff, he didn't look like the thin end of anyone's fantasy. Smiling, he said, "Nice show, lads, nice show." Then, I wanted a word. I wonder if you'd like to come to the office. There's someone I'd like you to meet. Catman and I looked at each other. I didn't know what Catman thought. I just wanted to go. Whatever, the manager had other ideas. With surprising dexterity, he hustled us to the office door, and with one hand on the handle and the other on Catman's elbow said, "Just Johnny." What happened next occurred so quickly. For a moment, I thought I was a child again, and I'd slipped into one of those surreal party games parents play on their kids, where you're blindfolded and led into a room and they stick your finger in half a grapefruit with a cherry in it and tell you it's Nelson's eye. And while you're nearly wetting your pants, they are all in fits of laughter and they lead you on to the dead man's handshake, and you can't see what's coming next. The manager opened the door and shoved me inside. Standing in the office by the desk was a large man, a fat man of about 50. He was buttoned up in a long dark coat, had shiny shoes and the kind of smile that fits around a cigar. His hand was extended as though he'd been waiting 20 years for me to come through the door. The dead man's handshake. Even now I can hear him, plain as day. As he took my hand, he said, "Johnny, I'm going to make you a star." His words sounded ridiculous, like a tacky movie. I was stunned. It was a movie of the life story. Local boy makes good. I was a country boy in a check shirt and faded denim who lived with his widowed mother. I worked hard driving a pickup for the local hardware store. I was polite, happy-go-lucky and kind to animals. I was a shy boy with a blistering voice hidden in the crotch of my jeans. The fat man with the shiny shoes was the same fat man in all Discovery movies. He clapped people on the back and knew what made America great. He only wanted the best for his boy. It all ended in money, fame, and ultimate happiness, US style. He still had hold of my hand and was talking to me. I didn't hear a word he said. I was watching, waiting for the Delta sun to rise over Woolwich Arsenal. It didn't happen. I told him I couldn't sing. He told me it didn't matter. He said, "You got the look." I started to laugh. Couldn't he see it was all borrowed, all of it? Nothing was mine. He put his arm around my shoulder and waved the cigar about with his free hand. "Well," he said, "you can always learn later." That made us both laugh. probably for different reasons. The manager and Catman came in then, but if I thought Catman would help me escape into the night, I was wrong. The manager had obviously given him the lowdown because he was grinning like a Cheshire cat. All three would have had me sign up on this chance for a lifetime there and then. Only all I could think of was I couldn't sing. I didn't have any talent. I wanted to get out, get them off my back. In the end, I agreed to take the fat man's card. His name was Solomon, and phone him during the week. Yeah, and I did ring him. He was all right, old Solomon. We met, and although I couldn't really see what he was after, he seemed very fair to me. Eventually, I signed a management and production contract with him. As I remember, he took care of all expenses until money started to come in. Then he would be on a percentage. I didn't get anything until things took off. The contract was for 6 months and seemed to give us both plenty of outs. I kept my day job. Solomon got 4 musicians for me to practice with. They were very good, semi-professional session men and were on some kind of nominal salary. They hadn't played together before as a group, but it didn't seem to make any difference. If you could name a tune, they could play it. We practiced 3 nights a week in St Albans Church Hall, and I needed to practice. We would choose a song and they would play it, the rhythm guitarist on vocals. Then I would try to sing along with him. We worked on a couple at a time until I could do them with the band. Actually, I found I could sing okay, but it didn't feel right. Another thing Solomon organised was a photo session. He hired a woman to do my hair and a pile of clothes from one of those shops in the West End that dress as stars, and a pro photographer. Solomon had a small recording studio in Brixton and we did the pics there. They at least came out well. I still got copies. Johnny on drums, zany madcap. Johnny on a stool, crooning into a mic, sensitive, romantic. Splayed legs and a guitar, raunchy. Drinking coffee at the piano, Johnny creative. When Solomon got the pictures, he was delighted. "See, I told you," he said. "You got the look." As I was under contract, Catman and I had to give up the mime act. It was a shame. We both missed it. The act was something we'd done together and it had been fun. The boys in the band were okay and Catman would often come along to rehearsals. In fact, we even began learning one of his songs. Funny, isn't it? But that was where my troubles began. No, my problems were there all along. The covers, well, all I had to do was sing in tune. We weren't doing anything special with them. Catman's song and a couple the guys had written, they had to be worked out by us all. We had to build the songs together. The others helped me as much as they could, and maybe anybody can learn to sing, but no one can teach you to put feelings and emotions into words. That was the magic, and I believe it's instinctive. I loved music, but the talent wasn't in me. I was like a puppet. The band said I'd get the knack, that it was all practice, but it isn't, is it? Then Solomon released some of the photographs to the music press. South London's singing sensation. I suppose it was my own fault. I left too much in other people's laps. Even so, you'd think Solomon would have told me I was up for a name change. Hello, Johnny Ventura. It threw me. I recognised the photos, but I didn't recognise me. There was also a kind of question and answer of my loves and hates, like I loved Italian food. The nearest I'd been to Italian food was a packet of Vesta risotto. Or I loved blondes but hated baked beans. As it goes, I was quite partial to a spot of baked beans on toast. Favourite actor? Marlon Brando. Favourite singer? Elvis. At least they got that right. There was plenty more, and it was all crap. I was being built up to an image, and I knew there was nothing to sustain it. I worried for a week, and then I pulled out. Catman And even my parents thought I was mad, giving up the teenage dream just as things were beginning to move. Solomon didn't like it at all. He moaned about money down the drain and contracts, but there was nothing he could do. Everything was reliant on my willing participation, and I was out of the game. In a way, I felt sorry for Solomon. He just couldn't understand that anyone could pass up on his chance of a lifetime. I realised all Solomon wanted was a good-looking boy to mould, but I think I had that working class fear of being found out. Back then, we didn't have a word for it. Now it's called imposter syndrome. The band decided to stay together and get another singer and go on the road. When they held the auditions, I sat in. One guy who came along was local, a year or two younger than me. I knew him by sight. His name was Mick. I didn't think he could really sing, and he was all gawky, all arms and legs and these big, pouty lips. But I thought he had something. The band weren't impressed. They tried a couple of numbers, but they really didn't come off. When they were finished, the rhythm guitarist nodded towards me and said, "No thanks, Mick. We'd rather keep the singer we got." Catman and I lost touch over the next few months. My fault. I couldn't face the coffee bar anymore. The last time I saw him, he was off to practice with some guys he knew. He'd bought an electric guitar. Myself, I found life fairly dull after all the excitement. One Saturday lunchtime, I got rotten drunk and ended up in one of those Navy recruiting shops, and before I knew it, I'd signed up for 9 years. And that's a contract you can't walk out on. December 63, I'm stomping around the parade ground in Portsmouth, and the Rolling Stones are number 12 in the charts.